Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Tevaron here, and welcome to another episode of Friday Night Magic. This week, we're going to be playing another list by Covert Go Blue, which he posted in his latest edition of Duels Diaries. I will put a link to that in the description, as well as the deck list, which includes some modifications which he suggested, and also one minor modification of my own. I cut Kiora from the deck because I just do not like Kiora as a planeswalker. But without further ado, let's go through the deck list. This is Bant without Collected Company. And we're without Collected Company because Duels doesn't have Collected Company. Otherwise, it would most likely be in here. We are running 2 Oath of Nissa. This is what I like to call a green ponder. You get to look at the top 3 cards of your library, reveal a creature, land, or planeswalker, and put it into your hand. And it also allows you to spend mana as though it were of any color to cast planeswalker spells. It's a very useful enchantment. 1 Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, who flips to Jace Telepath Unbound. 2 Deathcap Cultivator, mana acceleration, and later in the game, Death Touch can become relevant. Sylvan Advocate, great 2-drop, that is 2/3 and Vigilant, and then when you hit 6 lands, he becomes massive. And make sure creature lands massive as well. 3 Duskwatch Recruiter, because this guy is just a card advantage engine. And also, when he flips, allows you to cast your creatures on the cheap. 2 Lambholt Pacifist, who is a 3/3 2-drop. Now, she cannot attack unless you control the creature with power 4 or greater, but she can sure as heck block, and she does a great job of that. When she flips, she becomes a 4/4 vanilla. 1 Disperse, to deal with problem permanents. 2 Declaration in Stone. I have lauded this card enough in my past videos. It's just great. 2 Rabid Bite, which is a new form of removal in this deck, new to me at least. It is 1 and a green. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. This is a strictly better version of Fight. When you cast an effect that says target creature fights target creature, they both deal their damage to each other. With this card, our creature does not get dealt damage. Also, 2 Lantern Scout. This is a 3/2 for 3 and has Rally whenever Lantern Scout or another ally enters the battlefield under your control. Creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. This card is very good at bringing you back into stable territory when you have been beaten down by hyper-aggressive decks. 1 Nissa Vastwood Seer, who fetches you a forest and can flip into Nissa Sage Animist. 2 Tireless Tracker, Mr. Clue card advantage, him or herself. I can't really tell the gender of this personage. And also can become huge because when you sacrifice a clue, you get a +1/+1 counter on the Tireless Tracker. 3 Reflector Mage, because if you can cast Reflector Mage, why not put Reflector Mage in your deck? 3 Bounding Cressus. This guy is flash, and when he enters the battlefield, you may tap or untap target creature. You can do that to theirs to keep them from attacking, or at the end of their turn to keep them from tap them down to keep them from blocking, or untap your own creatures to have surprise blockers. Or if you want to be tricksy, untap Jace and loot with him again. 1 Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. 2 Woodland Wanderers as 4-drop huge vigilance guys. one Gideon, ally of Zendikar, who plays super well with Nissa, voice of Zendikar, in pumping out tokens and simply gumming up the board. One Archangel Avacyn, because she is baller, flips into Avacyn the Purifier. And one Jace, Unraveler of Secrets, who is card advantage and board control with the bouncing of creatures. The mana base is 2 plains, 3 islands, 4 forests, 2 lumbering falls, 2 canopy vistas, 2 prairie streams, 1 Westvale Abbey, 2 Hinterland Harbor, 2 Glacial Fortress, 2 Sunpetal Grove, and 4 Evolving Wilds. This is going to be fun, folks. Hold on to your seats. Okay. I also need to mention that this game commentary is going to be a bit different than the rest of my commentaries because for some reason the audio that I recorded failed to take and was corrupted, so I'm doing this in post. So it may be a little bit awkward here. But we do have a pretty good hand. Go ahead and take that Tireless Tracker. Try to get a bit of card advantage on our opponent. It's often important with Tireless Tracker to try not to drop it until you have a 4th land in hand. That way you are guaranteed to get at least 1 clue off of the Tireless Tracker. There are circumstances when that is not the case, like when you need him on the board to keep yourself from getting beat about the head and neck. Gideon is very nice to see also, and with Oath of Nissa out, casting him is not going to be a problem. Looks like we are going to go ahead and get a plains in any case. There are other double white casting costs in the deck. See what our opponent is up to here. Looks like our opponent is on white, green, and colorless ramp. So we may be seeing some Eldrazi from this deck. Looks like a Reclamation Sage is going to take care of Oath of Nissa. So now I am doubly glad that we fetched for that plains there with the Evolving Wilds. The question is here whether we want to drop Jace, Nissa, or just hold up 3 mana to cast Krasis and try to kill the Reclamation Sage. Hopefully there, with clicking continue quickly, we were able to fool them into not thinking we had something to cast. See if we can kill this Rec Sage. And Spatial Contortion looks like it's going to stop that plan. Well, I would have liked for us to keep the Bounding Krasis, but that, it seems, was not in the cards. Turn coming back to us now. And again, we have a few options. We can play Gideon, or we can play the Tireless Tracker and drop a land, but we are going to play Gideon and pump out a Knight. Try to stabilize the board a little bit. I'm trying to get used to right-clicking on cards and choosing options instead of zooming. I got a tip from a commenter telling me that that was something that would make it a lot easier and lower the risk of choosing the wrong option. And it seems that that's the case. It's just a matter of breaking the habit that I have of zooming in and choosing it that way. Alright, another Evolving Wilds here. Well, our opponent ramped, so they are up to 6 mana now. would be probably pretty good to drop Nissa and just pump out more things. But first, let's up Gideon to a 5-5 and bash in there with him. Gideon also works really well with Rabid Bite there. He gives you a 5-power creature to use on Rabid Bite, or to use Rabid Bite with, however is the correct grammatical way to say that phrase. So we're going to drop Nissa and put out another critter. I'm going to go ahead and play the Evolving Wilds as well. We will be fetching for an island this time. So now we have 2 blue, 2 white, and 2 green sources on the board. And if our opponent does not manage to deal with one of our planeswalkers, I imagine they are going to be in loads of trouble, because these guys are just going to grind for value. I love the art on Rabid Bite there. That is so grotesquely flavorful. Well, Reality Smasher is a pretty good answer here. Both of those going at Nissa. I think it's probably worth just letting Nissa die and not trading off our creatures here. Because it would take both of them to prevent her from dying, and she would still go down to very low loyalty. So now we are going to see the utility of Gideon plus Rabid Bite. Go ahead and Rabid Bite Gideon on the Reality Smasher. We do still have to discard a card to Reality Smasher's ability. And I think we'll get rid of the Lambholt Pacifist. As good as she is at blocking and sometimes attacking, I think the rest of the cards in our hand are a bit better. We will as well deploy Jace, as if he survives, we can absolutely flip him next turn. Swing in for 7, and we have our opponent down to 8. And the game is actually looking fairly okay at this point. Okay, looks like the opponent has decided to get rid of Jace, does not want to be dealing with those shenanigans. And continues to deploy land also, as well as a Deathcap Cultivator, which honestly is not going to be too big of a problem for us at this juncture. We do still have that clue on board that we may get a chance to pop. And I don't think it's worth blocking here. That guy's not going to kill Gideon. It's going to take him down to 4, and he's going to be still quite healthy with loyalty. So I was going to say, if the opponent will ever commit to the attack, we'll go ahead and just let that Reclamation Sage hit Gideon. Keep our plant up to hopefully stifle a lethal attack at a later time. So we will continue our onslaught here, I believe. Go ahead and tick up Gideon for a 5/5 indestructible. And we will swing with both. If our opponent chooses to block the Knight ally, that's just one less attacker that our opponent has to pressure our Planeswalker with. And putting them to 1 seems to be an okay thing as well. We will deploy a Duskwatch Recruiter, leaving up 3 mana so that we can either use the Recruiter's ability to look at the top 3 cards of our library and choose a creature to put into our hand, or crack the clue, if that is something that we would rather do. Looks like the opponent is on 8 land. Luckily 8 land and Deathcap Cultivator. Luckily 9 mana does not an Ulamog cast. I could see Ulamog being an issue here. Linvala is a bit of an issue. They're not going to get the Angel, but they are going to gain 5 life. They get no Angel because even though we had more creatures before Linvala was cast, when she entered the battlefield and looked, we both had the same number of creatures. Looks like our opponent is attacking us and not Gideon. No, they're attacking Gideon. Alrighty. Decided to hold back the Sage, and we will definitely not be blocking 2 damage to Gideon here. And I think we're going to crack the clue here. A creature is not what we need. We would like to get some sort of removal if possible. And it looks like that was not possible. Ooh, there is a Deathcap Cultivator, and we have Delirium, so that guy is Death Touch. And again, I think we're going to see the power of Gideon plus Rabid Bite here. It's no Dramoka's command, but it is a good substitute. Does a good job of emulating it in a lot of circumstances. At least where the fight ability on Dramoka's command would be good. And the fact that Rabid Bite doesn't fight is actually really good. Their creature doesn't deal damage to our creature. It's just our creature dealing damage to theirs without the retaliation. Alright, we're probably going to just drop Tireless Tracker here and get 2 clues. Restock our clue count for more card advantage. And hopefully our opponent does not untap an Ulamog us, though at this point I don't think Ulamog would get the job done with them at 2 life. Because it would require them, if they don't have a land, well no, the land, it would definitely require them to tap out. And yeah, that's the game. Great. See you guys in the next one. Ooh. 3 Evolving Wilds is not the greatest. Though we can still drop a turn 2. No, yeah. I thought that I mulliganed there, but I wasn't for sure. It looks like, yes, we did. And this hand appears to be a bit better, despite the still somewhat slow start. I think it's a much better ratio of board presence to lands. Especially since 3 of those lands aren't Evolving Wilds. Ooh, Krasis is always nice to see. Looks like our opponent dropped a Jaddy Offshoot there. They may be on some form of ramp, which is what you usually see Jaddy Offshoots played in. Okay, opponent gaining some life there. That may be relevant to this game. Just pass the forest, or pass the forest, play the forest and pass the turn. Next turn we can play our Hinterland Harbor untapped and be able to play some of our spells. Sylvan Ranger, fixing mana. Ooh, looks like once again we are on an XX colorless deck. In this case it looks like red-green colorless. And a Canopy Vista, so we have the option here. Yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and play the Harbor and hold up Krasis. Hopefully we can get our opponent if they attack us with that Sylvan Ranger. Though they could also have instant speed removal for the Krasis. Is entirely possible. Also possible they just don't want to risk losing the Tireless Tracker to a Bounding Krasis. And it appears that may be the case. We're going to play the Krasis in any event. We'll tap down the Ranger. That is the creature on their side that we would least like them to block with. If they were to trade the Tracker or chump with the Jaddy Offshoot, we would find that to be very, very, very appealing. Tyler's Tracker is card advantage that sometimes just cannot be overcome if it stays in play long enough. Not to mention the fact that it can grow to be a humongous size. And again, we have several options. We can Reflector Mage, we can Tireless Tracker, or Declaration in Stone, but we choose here to Reflector Mage and get the tempo on our opponent. They will not be able to replay that Tireless Tracker next turn, and hopefully will give us a chance to get in even more beatdown. Jaddy Offshoot number 2. That may be the target that our Declaration in Stone gets rid of, getting us a 2-for-1. It will give them 2 clues. I think that's probably acceptable, though. Go ahead here and play Oath of Nissa, I think. No? Go ahead here and play Tireless Tracker. Get ourselves a clue, and then Declaration in Stone these Jaddy Offshoots. Alright. Talk about efficiency. Opponent goes ahead and sacrifices one of those clues, and we will go ahead and swing for 5. 2-for-1ing our opponent, and at the same time, stopping their rather annoying life gain. Our opponent, if you hadn't noticed, is also stuck on 3 lands. Not now, though. There's Nissa's Pilgrimage. And it can be argued that perhaps us giving them clues and our opponent sacking them is what got them to that Nissa's Pilgrimage. But I think the trade-off is worth it. Go ahead and play Oath of Nissa. See what we can find from the Green Ponder. 2 lands, although one of which is a Westvale Abbey, and a Reflector Mage. Either of these would be okay, but I do think we want the Evolving Wilds. This is going to give us more clues, allow us to pump our Tireless Tracker more. Argument could have been made for taking either of the other cards, especially the Reflector Mage. But not only does this Evolving Wilds do the 2 things I said before, card advantage and pumping our Tireless Tracker, it also thins our deck out of further lands, thereby reducing the chance of us drawing them. Go ahead and sacrifice these clues, get our Tireless Tracker up to a 5-4. Ooh, we top deck Archangel Avacyn. That's quite a good draw, and we're going to go ahead and swing in there for 10 damage, putting our opponent to 7. And having onboard lethal. Well, our opponent is indeed playing Eldrazi in the deck, and we say goodbye to Archangel Avacyn. Adieu, we barely knew thee. And yet, I don't think that it's going to matter a ton. We still have a pretty overwhelming board advantage here, so we're going to go ahead and drop Nissa, Vastwood Seer. Got to be careful in this deck with the 2 Nissas. Well, never mind. There goes the opponent. And I will see you in the next game. Well, this is a bad hand. This is a better hand. Looks like we can Lumbering Falls. Fetch up a white, and we've got all our mana. And it is unfortunate. It looks like we're playing against the same opponent. As I was saying in the at the end of the last game, where we have Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, and Nissa, Vastwood Seer, we need to be really careful. There is a separate rule for Planeswalkers that is different from the legendary rule called the Planeswalker Uniqueness Rule. And that says that you can't have any 2 Planeswalkers with the same name. If you see there on Bounding Krasis, where it says Creature Fish Lizard, on Planeswalkers it will say, like for example, the Nissa in our hand will say Planeswalker Nissa. And if you flip Nissa Vastwood Seer, in that space on that card, it will also say Planeswalker Nissa. You cannot have both of those out at the same time. If you have Nissa Voice of Zendikar out and flip Nissa Vastwood Seer, then you will have to choose one of them to keep and the other will be sacrificed. It goes vice versa if you have the Vastwood Seer flipped and you play Nissa Voice of Zendikar from your hand. You have to sacrifice one of them, which is not always bad. Sometimes you do want to use the ability of one of the Nissa's Planeswalkers and then deploy the other one to get an extra activation for another ability. Sometimes that's the correct play. Though to do it accidentally is rather annoying. Looks like we're going to go ahead and try to out-tempo the opponent yet again. They have gained 3 life off of Jaddy Offshoot, which, as I said, is annoying, but is not the end of the world. And it looks like they have nothing to play despite having 5 mana out. So that could be either good or bad for us, depending on if they're trying to get us to overextend and then do something nasty to us. And again, we have several options here. We can play Hold Up Mana for Bounding Crisis. We can play Tireless Tracker and drop a land, which is not what we choose. What we choose is to deploy Nissa and start pumping out plant tokens, getting our board as mucked up as possible, so that if we do choose to tick down Nissa to put +1/+1 counters on all our creature, it's that much more effective. Although I will say that, should you ever get Nissa up high enough to ultimate her, either Voice of Zendikar or Vastwood Seer, you're probably winning that game. Looks like our opponent wants to redeploy the Jaddy that we bounced, and its twin brother. Or sister. We don't know, and we're not going to judge. And they're going to gain a crap ton of life with a Nissa's Pilgrimage. And by crap ton, I mean literally 4. Not insurmountable. And at this point, I don't think we want to play Declaration. Our opponent has a ton of mana out. They're getting really close to casting Ulamog or some other huge creature that we would rather Declaration. I think we can probably deal with the life gain at this point with what we have in our hand and on the board. And we just want to make sure to be able to deal with some ginormous monster that we couldn't otherwise with this Declaration in stone. Now we are going to counter up our creatures. We did deploy the Tireless Tracker first so that he would get a counter as well. And now we're going to swing with our 3/4. Not really much point in swinging with the 1/2 plant, as it's just going to get walled and not get through. Go ahead and pass the turn, leaving up mana to sack our clue. And there is one of those monstrous fatties that I was just talking about. Uvenwald Hydra is big. And it gets bigger. And they fetched up a Rogue's Passage, so we can't block it either. And I think that is the more pressing issue right now, as with our opponent at 26 life, I don't think it's likely that they're going to feel the need to hold that Hydra back to block. So chances are we are just going to declare that Hydra in stone and go about our merry business of swinging. Woodland Wanderer is a nice draw, though. Ooh, Declaration number 2. So now we have out to the Hydra and to a future monster. Again, going to resist the temptation to use it on the Jaddy Offshoots here. Go ahead and start ticking Nissa Vastwood Seer up again. She's done a good job of buffing our team. Looks like we are fetching a forest here, which is honestly a play mistake. Here we should have fetched a plains. The reason being, if our opponent untaps and casts Ulamog and is cognizant of the fact that we only have 2 white sources and exiles those, then we have no way to cast Declaration in stone without top decking a white mana source. So it was definitely a misplay to get a forest there. We should have certainly gotten a plains. And our opponent is only 1 mana off of casting an Ulamog if they have it in their hand. All it would take would be a land drop, cast. And there is land drop, so that's 10 mana. Opponent still staying above 20 life, though we continue to add pressure to the board. And we see that that land that they just played was a plains. So either they are splashing white in the deck, or they are playing Radiant Flames and just want the single white source for 3 damage Radiant Flames. Either is possible, and it looks like it was the second thing. Oh. Yeah. Not possible to save our creatures there. Well, the one creature with a clue, because he was down to 1 life, and sacking the clue would have given him +1, and Kozilek's Return would have still killed the Tireless Tracker. However, we can go ahead and deploy our Bounding Krasis. Or Crassus, I'm not sure which is actually the correct pronunciation, but I'm going to go with Krasis. On a more positive note, our opponent did rid themselves of their 2 Jaddy Offshoots, so that's going to be the end of that life gain. See what we can find that would be useful with Nissa here. And I think we're definitely going to take Jace. Just the single best choice there. Still, we're going to deploy Woodland Wanderer as a 5/5 Vigilance Trample big dude. And go ahead and pump out another plant token. We unfortunately do not have enough mana up to crack a clue at this point, but I think it was worth it to repopulate the board with threats. And a Woodland Wanderer and a Krasis, uncontested, are a pretty good clock. Not to mention that we also have Lumbering Falls on board if that becomes necessary. Alright. Well, Nissa's Renewal is going to gain 7 more life for our opponent and pull 3 more basics out of their deck. Still, nothing to deal with what's actually on the board, and they're down to 1 card. Which may be Ulamog. And at this point, I don't think that is too huge a deal. Unless they exile our 2 white sources, then it's a huge deal. We will pump out yet another plant. Ultimating Nissa could be a possibility here, just depending on what develops in this game. Go ahead and play that island and our Jace. Hopefully Jace will survive the turn and begin to loot us into a flip. Tamio's Journal even. Okay. I'm not going to argue. Seems a bit of a weird choice, but who am I to say? And Gaia's Revenge. Okay, that stops the beats a little bit, perhaps. We cannot declare that in stone because he cannot be targeted except by green things. And Declaration in stone is most definitely not that. Alright, we're going to start off by looting with Jace. Lots of good choices here. Guess we'll go ahead and get rid of Reflector Mage. Since Reflector Mage can't target the Gaia's Revenge, keep the cards that are at this moment relative. Can't really flashback Declaration right now for the same reasons that we talked about earlier. Guess we'll +1 Jace on nothing. And then we will put out another plant token. And swing with the Woodland Wanderer. If our opponent wants to trade Gaia's Revenge for the 5/5, we're okay with that. If they want to just take 5 to the face, we're okay with that also. So kind of a win-win situation for us. Go ahead and play Tireless Tracker and Nissa. And I think we do probably want to flip her here and try to draw into more pressure. We will, unfortunately, as I talked about before, be losing Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. We have already used her plant ability. Go ahead and get the third white mana source now, so as to secure ourselves against Ulamog, removing all of that. We do want to keep the Vastwood Seer. Sage Animist, I believe, is the flipped name of Nissa in that form. And we will go ahead and plus her to reveal and possibly draw a card. We draw a Duskwatch Recruiter to go with the Duskwatch Recruiter in our hand. Tamio's Journal will put out a clue. Our opponent chooses not to wait for 3 clues so that they can Demonic Tutor. Going ahead and sacking it right away to just draw a card. And decides that they can't come back. But we can, with one more opponent. See you then. We can cast Duskwatch Recruiter with this hand, but I don't want to risk not being able to cast the rest, so this hand is a lot better. We are lacking blue for the Krasis, but we can cast everything else in the hand. So that makes it much better than the first hand. Looks like we're playing against something with green in it. And there's our blue mana. Better run lucky than good, I suppose. Lead off with the plains. That will allow us to play either the Glacial Fortress or the Sun Petal Grove untapped next turn. Most likely it will be the Sun Petal Grove, so we can cast our Duskwatch Recruiter. Mountain and Sylvan Advocate from the opponent. That is a bit unfortunate, though not insurmountable. Deploy the Duskwatch Recruiter. He's not superly well matched up with the Sylvan Advocate before he flips. However, his ability is relevant and his body can become relevant. If he flips, the 3/3 matches up well with the 2/3 of the Sylvan Advocate. That is before the opponent gets to 6 lands and he becomes a 4/5. Sylvan Ranger, so Duskwatch Recruiter will not be flipping this turn. See if we see another color here, and we do see white. Okay then. So we may need to watch out for removal and or board sweepers, unless the white again is just for the triggering of the 3rd damage on Radiant Flames. We'll pass with Bounding Krasis mana up, serving the double purpose of flipping Duskwatch Recruiter into something that can favorably block Sylvan Advocate. Not super thrilled to see Nahiri here, I'll be honest with you. She is quite a good planeswalker. Much better than I honestly thought she was the first time I read her abilities. She is quite good. Go ahead and deploy our Bounding Krasis, tapping down the Sylvan Advocate. So I think that this Rabid Bite is what's going to get cast. We definitely could cast Declaration in Stone, but I would prefer to save that for something a little more deserving of the non-missing removal there. Hits pretty much everything in the format that is not hexproof. I think we're going to go ahead and take the Lumbering Falls here. However, we need to play the forest to be sure and be able to cast the Rabid Bite. And now we will kill Nahiri. Since we cast 2 spells, Duskwatch Recruiter becomes Duskwatch Recruiter again, instead of Crowlin Horde Howler. Opponent has a Tireless Tracker for us, who will deploy a clue on their side of the board. We have removal for him if we want to do that. Which is going to be better here? I think we're going to go ahead and play a Tireless Tracker of our own. And then Glacial Fortress, giving us the ability to sack a clue, or just go ahead and Declaration and Stone this Tireless Tracker and get rid of our opponent's card advantage engine, while hopefully keeping our own card advantage engine. Opponent chooses to crack that clue in response, even though it's not super relevant. Though it's not super irrelevant either, so. Alright, finally we do some damage to the opponent's life total. Looks like our opponent is sacking the second clue and digging here. Okay, Duskwatch Recruiter of their own, choosing to leave that Evolving Wilds uncracked. Woodland Wanderer's not a bad top deck. We'll finally go ahead and get this Lumbering Falls out there. Attacking with it might be something we actually want to do eventually. We're going to attack with the Tracker to give our opponent a chance to make a mistake. Looks like they're not going to do that. If they had blocked with both of them, we could have sacrificed 2 clues to take our Tireless Tracker out of lethal range and kill both of their creatures. Go ahead and cast our Woodland Wanderer. Hopefully we're not on the path to getting Planar Outbursted or Languished here. And it looks like we actually may be Planar Outburst or Languished, because they just fetched the second white source. Oh, no, never mind. Outland Colossus. That's definitely not Planar Outburst or Languished. And the opponent decides that's it. Well, friends, that's going to be it for this episode of Friday Night Magic. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like below. It really does help. Consider subscribing to the channel. You'll be notified when I upload new content. And until next time, friends, be excellent to each other.